Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 670. The 2026 Sydney Film Festival launches this week, and one of the most anticipated films on the program is Mockbuster, a documentary that chronicles Australian filmmaker Anthony Frith, who, in a last-ditch effort to direct a feature film, agrees to take on a project produced by the legendary trash movie house The Asylum. The catch? Anthony has 6 days to shoot a dinosaur film in suburban Adelaide on a shoestring budget. A documentary that delves into the themes of ambition and artistic expression in the rollercoaster world of low budget genre filmmaking. Mockbuster is a must watch for anyone attending the Sydney Film Festival. And if you go now to the Sydney Film Festival website, that's sff.org.au, you can find that dates for Mockbuster. You have Saturday, 6th of June at 8:40 at Event Centres, George Street. You got Sunday, 7th of June of 2026, at 7:15 at the Dendy Newtown. And a cool thing about that screening is that's a double feature of all Anthony Thrift, because afterwards you get to see The Land of Time Forgot as well. So you get to see the documentary of the movie and the movie afterwards. So either session is highly, yeah, just I think everyone should just check it out. And yeah, I'm happy to say that Anthony joins me now to talk about all things Mockbuster. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And it's great to have you on now because I can just ask so many questions that I had after watching this documentary. The first question I have is that I was asking myself, it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation here that I'm watching with this movie. I was kind of wondering, was the idea for a documentary always there about a feature, a upcoming filmmaker making his first feature? Was that something that was already in place before you contact Asylum, or does the Asylum kind of thing happen first and then you decide a documentary? How does it all kind of work out in that way?
Yeah, it was kind of the same idea, to be honest. Like the two sort of thoughts came together. Like, oh, I should make a film for the Asylum and make a documentary about it. It was like sort of one thought. Because I had like a previous experience making a documentary in a similar sort of vein about like a novelty musician in the
Hmm.
USA, and he's written like at that point he'd written about 20,000 songs. And his shtick was that each song per year earned him $2 per year. So he's kind of making $40,000 from streaming royalties alone just by having like the sheer breadth of his music. And the sort of conceit of that documentary was that I had to write 100 songs in 10 days with him as like my mentor. And I kind of fell in love with that sort of like I guess you'd call it like a format. So then always loved the Asylum, and it kind of just made sense to make a film for them and document the process.
When you get in contact with the Asylum, first off, you want to pitch yourself as a filmmaker. How soon does the documentary question come into play?
Pretty quickly. Yeah, so I kind of I think the initial conversation we had, like I sent an email saying, "Hey, I got an idea. I'd love to talk to you about." We jumped on Zoom and was like, I want to make one of your movies and I want to document the process. And yeah, they were like, "Yeah, sure." So it's a pretty quick conversation.
That's the thing that you really take from the guys from the Asylum. I mean, they know who they are, they know what they want to do, they got their format and everything. And it's really cool to me in that they're open to have kind of like a person come in and take on one of their projects. One of the questions you asked one of the people from the asylum is, why did you choose me? And the simple answer is, well, you asked.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool in one sense because they're open to have someone coming with no experience and such and take on these kind of films. And it's such a talking to so many independent filmmakers. It's such a task to try to get a movie off the ground, and let alone have a distributor or a studio come in and finance it. That they're so open to have people be able to work for them. I'm sure it was something that was a breath of fresh air for you to have, considering, as we see in the documentary, you're dealing with a lot of rejection letters and such from local and international production houses as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's very cool. It's very Corman-esque, where Corman would just kind of bring people in and let them make films, and people break out from those sort of situations. So like yeah, they know fully what they're making, and it's sometimes easier and cheaper to work with greener people. But then that, like, having that credit and that film behind you means that you have a leg up in your career now. So then you can, and I think they kind of understand that they are kind of a film school in a way where people can get a credit and a feature behind them, especially in the US, where you have to, I don't know how it works fully, but like they've got the whole sort of like, you have to have a certain amount of credits to join the unions to get the bigger
Right.
shows on Netflix and stuff like that. So Asylum kind of help people get those credits so then they can go to those big Disney shows or Netflix shows or whatever. So it's kind of, yeah, I just think it's really kind of cool, sort of, grindhouse sort of methodology that, is missing everywhere.
It is something that's kind of missing. And what's really interesting to me is that, as you can see from, or people who watch this on YouTube, you look at my movie posters behind me. I mean, we're talking about classic films, or each one of these filmmakers who made these classic films, they started from somewhere.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
mentioned before the School of Corman, could be Troma, it could be just like, some of these guys came from the 70s, and the 70s was such a grindhouse kind of spirit to a lot of the stuff that they
Yeah,
did
yeah.
as well, student films and everything else. And it's something that you actually talk about in the film. The first line is like every great director has to start from somewhere. And it seems to me that now more than ever, it seems like a lot of people are kind of like coming out from the woodwork and starting from places like YouTube or
Mm.
maybe anything like that, or maybe Asylum and such. And it seems like such a ripe moment right now for up and coming filmmakers or ambitious filmmakers such as yourself to kind of like get your foot in the door. And there are ways to kind of get those films out there and be seen as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think you got to kind of like cut your teeth somewhere, and like there's there's so much to learn about filmmaking, and it's you don't really learn it until you've made a film, which is again that chicken and egg thing. So yeah, I think you've got to like almost start lower than what you'd think, because the great directors from previous years have started. It feels like there used to be simpler pathways in a
Hmm.
way, because there was a more distinct pathway. While now there's not a very clear pathway, but there's more options to kind of learn the skills. I think I got going a bit of a tangent here, but like yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a weird sort of change at the moment. Like it was Backroom's an obsession with two YouTubers and their two sort
YouTubers,
of
yeah,
massive movies at the moment. And obviously the Philippou boys,
who are
starting
in your movie. Yep.
YouTubers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So YouTube seems like it's kind of punching above its weight right now.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. Well, I think the really interesting thing is that, and it's a thing that comes up quite a lot when I talk to indie filmmakers as well, is that there is so much opportunity to get your film out there, but it's one thing where you get your film out there, it's another thing where you get people to actually watch it because the option is so rife. I
Yeah,
mean, we're talking when you just talk Asylum on its own. I mean, how many productions do you think they do a year? Maybe 50, maybe more.
15 to 20.
Well, I mean, that's a
Yeah,
lot of films to make within one year from like one production house. But their thing is always seems to be is like it's a quantity above anything else.
yeah,
They pre-sell this stuff. They want to get it
that's right.
out there. They got like a number of films they want to hit as well, and they got like an audience as well, which
Yeah,
is something that anyone can struggle with, even like a writer or a YouTuber or a content creator. Finding that audience and finding a community, I think, is pivotal to
yeah.
getting your movies across or any type of artistic endeavor across.
Yeah, totally. I think what's kind of funny and interesting about the Asylum is that they used to be like the joke, but now I think
Mm.
people kind of get the shtick of the Asylum, and they're kind of like in a their own way. It's kind of cool to like the Asylum now, because they've got a very particular brand, and you see an Asylum film, you know exactly what it's going to be. So if that's what you're in for, if that's what you're up for, sorry, then you know what you're going to get. So it's kind of interesting to see that change over the because I remember what, like a decade ago when I first found out about the Asylum, everyone was like, oh, like they just make crappy movies, they don't care. But then, yeah, I guess after it's been I think 30 years next year for the Asylum, they kind of built themselves this very specific reputation that's resonated with a very specific group of people, which is kind of funny and interesting.
I mean, it comes down, I think, a number one component on everything is consistency.
Yeah,
If you
totally.
stick through it and you stick to who you are and you know what you are, which they clearly do, at the end, you end up being a survivor. And in that 30 years that they've been making movies, I can imagine dozens of maybe indie art house kind of distributors that have and the studios that have folded in that time
Yeah,
because the film that
totally.
they made, which was special to them in maybe an artistic sense or maybe messaging or whatever, didn't catch an audience where their movies do. So
Yeah.
it really comes down to, are we working in a movie business to make business? Are we working in a business to find next? And that's always been the balance, right? Why are we in this for? And sometimes you have to find the happy medium in there, which is something I think you was kind of struggling with the movie. I mean, you're trying to express yourself as a filmmaker and find your voice, but at the same time, you need to speak the language of Asylum, and it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to do both at the same time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then you realize that like they kind of whittle away all those edges as well in the post-production process because
Right.
the film always inevitably becomes an Asylum film. That's the reality of their sort of methodology. Because the three, the two Davids and Paul have such a hand in
Yep.
everything from day one, basically. So you try to like push as much as you can, but sort of reel it back in as the process goes on.
When you go over to LA and you're going to meet up with the Asylum people, what's the expectation in your mind of what that machine kind of look like compared to what you kind of, meet when you
Yeah.
get to LAX and you go over and you meet everyone there?
I had this really sort of because I'd met all the guys on Zoom and stuff prior to like heading over, and they were just funny, sort of like a bit scruffy guys, and I was just expecting this sort of like like a punk rock sort of like office with like graffiti and holes in the walls everywhere. But then you walk in, it's just like a normal office building, and you just feel like you're working for an accountant or something, which was kind of interesting. But then I think what really surprised me is, and I think this is like a thought that a lot of people have about the Asylum specifically, is that they don't care about their
Mm.
films, but they really do. They really try their hardest, and I think this is what to me makes the Asylum so special, is that everyone who makes their films is trying their best to make that film as good as they can within the restraints and the restrictions. And instead of just being like, oh, we'll just make a bad movie and churn it out, it's like, no, we've got these restrictions. Let's try to make a good movie. And then the sort of like humor and the brilliance of them comes from that, rather than being tongue in cheek. I remember when I first met Anthony Ferrante, he directed Sharknado. He would always talk about these films have an energy of desperation, which is kind
Mm.
of because you've only got 6 days to shoot it. Everyone on set's desperate to make the day, whether it's the actors or the crew. And I think that reflects the final film. And I think then that also kind of gives it a certain quality that other sort of films at this level don't have. And I think that kind of leads into their style and everything as well. But it's kind of yeah, I just didn't expect any of that sort of like real care and love around it. But then also the knowledge of the restrictions. So it's like push as hard as you can, but also like you've got 6 days. So,
Speaking of those 6 days, um, what do you find to be the most kind of most challenging thing to deal with when it comes to filming in those kind of conditions? Because on one end, you have to be a leader of a kind of like a small troop of a community with your crew and cast and all that. But then on the other end, you're dealing with the expectations that Asylum have for them. Like the whole costume thing to me was just really mind-boggling in that they saved a lot of stuff for the first day of shooting. I mean, that would, to me would have just done my head in because you've done as much pre as you could and you had
yeah,
your schedule and you had your 6 days and you had to do it. Um, but at the same time, you're dealing with a lot of ego that's on the set because the actors need to know their lines, and your crew need to know their stuff as well. So where's the biggest kind of lessons learned you had in regards to that context of making a film like this?
yeah. I think it's a tough one because I think a lot of people thought it was a prank for a while. Like a lot of the cast and crew thought we were making a prank show and not like an actual documentary.
Right.
So I guess being like like even clearer. I felt I was clear when we were bringing people on board, but yeah, some people still just didn't quite believe it. So just being really clear and being like, this is what we're doing. It's gonna be horrible. We've got 25 pages a day, and we'll probably miss a day of shooting because of costumes. So I think that was kind of the big sort of takeaway, just being really, really, really like even clearer than what I thought I was being. But then just the sheer amount of pages was kind of the biggest stressor on everyone because it's like when you're shooting a short or a feature or whatever, you shoot 3 to 5 pages a day usually, and then all of a sudden, all these people who had been on big sets before were like, "Oh, we're shooting 25 pages today." And we've got 6 locations, and everyone's like, wait, like how do you do any of that? And it just kind of adds this real sort of it's like a cloud over everyone because they know that we've got like when you get to set at 8 a.m., you're like, oh shit, like this is the big day. We've got to churn through all of this as quick as possible. All the actors need to remember the lines. The camera's got to be in focus. The batteries have to be charged. So I think everyone's kind of got their own sort of like way, like their thoughts on dealing with that. And I think that just, yeah, it's really kind of weird sort of set. The first few days particularly, it's a sort of weird feeling on set. It's not sort of like, let's get together and make a film. It's like, no, how the hell are we going to do this? Which is, I guess, Ferrante was talking about the energy of desperation, but yeah, it's strange. It's a strange feeling.
On top of that, you have the logistics of making a documentary too.
Yeah.
So you have your head in like different worlds here. You're a documentarian, but you're also a feature film maker as well. How do you get? How do you have the two crews working at the same time? How much do you give out like certain amount of uh, power or charge to your documentary crew to make decisions on their own so you can focus on your own thing? Or are you just as much hands-on on the days in regards to that stuff as well? Or is the documentary more done in post than it does is on the day itself? I'm really curious about the
Yeah, yeah.
dynamic there.
I would say it's probably 50-50. So Max, the DOP, and I every morning on the way to set would call because we have like half-hour drive, hour drive, and I will just list through like I would say like, well, we've got this scene which could be important. We've got this funny dinosaur scene which could be funny and interesting, and then we'll just discuss how each of those scenes could or would be shot, and then also what the previous sort of days sort of story beats were, and we have conversations with the producer and all that too. But that's more specifically just Max on those days, like on the morning drives. And then we'll kind of come up with a sort of loose game plan because at the end of the day it's documentary. We have no idea what's going to happen. Like we might not get to shoot at all that day because it's going to rain, or the Asylum guys hated what we shot the previous day. We might have to reshoot that. We just had no idea. So we'll try to plan as much as we could on those drives. And then Trav, the sound guy, had this really great idea because I was mic'd up anyway. He gave each of the producers and the documentary crew in-ear monitors, so they could at all times hear me, but I also sent them a feed from the other characters, the other sort of actors and crew. So they had like much more awareness of what was going on than I did, so they could come and say like, oh, this is happening over here. Should we go see what that is? But the other benefit of that was that I could say, I'm going to go speak to this person now. Like, I think this could be an interesting thing to capture. And then him and Brad, the B cam operator, had sort of like game plans where if I was, they'd know to cross shoot certain scenes or know what sort of coverage they could, they like sort of like code words between them on how to get the coverage that they needed. So that's kind of how we managed the production. Everything prior to and after the sort of shoot was quite simple because we could stop and start. Like if it was just an interview, I could turn to Max and be like, oh, hey, we should like get that again, and that's fine. But it was just the actual like 6-day shoot was quite chaotic in that, essentially directing 2 films at the same time. But then in post was when we really started to pick and choose because there's so much so much happens over a week. There's like we had dozens of hours of footage, so we kind of really crafted. We had an idea of what the story was in our heads, but like kind of really crafted the specifics of the story in post. Yeah, so it's a bit 50-50, I'd say.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. The other thing about this whole project as well is that this is the first Asylum production in Australia.
Yeah.
What kind of challenges comes up in that? Because I'm sure Asylum is used to doing certain things a certain way, but the American way, right? In their industry with their unions and everything else. And Australia is just a whole different kind of ball game in regards to that.
Yeah.
What outside of something like just say time zone differences, which I'm sure would have been just a pain in the ass because you have to wait for notes to come in at a certain time in the morning and everything like that. What other kind of challenges did you find in regards to getting an Asylum style picture up and running in Australia?
Yeah.
Is there things about the Australian film industry and the way we do things that makes it kind of more difficult to get those kind of things happening as opposed to doing it in like, I don't know, Utah or Maine or something like that?
So the first big one is they do 12-hour days. in the US, we do 10-hour days. So we immediately lost 2 hours per day just because of that. And then, we didn't have money to pay overtime. So we had to stick to those 10-hour days as much as possible. The other big one was especially in Adelaide. They've got very specific requirements, like you have to shoot on a certain red camera, like a red Komodo or Dragon or whatever. I can't remember exactly. And there was only like, it was finding that camera was difficult because we don't have that sort of, if we were shooting in Sydney or Melbourne, I'm sure we could have just like clicked our fingers and it would have appeared. And the other thing was like specific costumes. So they would be like, we need this costume. And it's like, well, like someone either has to make it or we have to ship it over from Sydney, but we shoot tomorrow. And we just don't have the ability to, like in Sydney, I'm sure you can just go to the Fox studio and get like any wonderful costume you want and bring it to set and be ready. But here it was like, no, like someone's got to make this now. Because they're used to just clicking their fingers and like everything, because in LA it's like such a big industry and everything's a block away. So if they wanted this camera or this person or this costume, they'd just get it immediately. So that was quite difficult for them to kind of get their heads around. And I also don't think they understood how big Australia was. Like they were sending like, oh, this could be a good location. And it was like the Flinders Ranges, which is like 6 hours away. Like, well, we can't really go shoot there because, we've got 30 people to transport. So just like, the sort of scale of Australia didn't really, they just didn't, most of people outside of Australia don't understand how big it is and how small Adelaide is. And then just, finding crew, because we got lucky because what happened was Bring Her Back had just finished shooting, and then there was like a 2-week gap between that and the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and we were fortunate enough to just get all that crew that were in between those two shoots. So we had like really amazing crew on the Land That Time Forgot. But I think if our timing was off, we would have just had no one, because there's only really like 2 or 3 crews worth of people in Adelaide. So there was quite a few hiccups. The other thing which the Asylum were really good about was we've got the sort of very, very specific like award rates that need to be paid to be a legal production, but that wasn't really an issue. They were happy to do keep everything above board with that. The other thing in LA as well, it's like everything moves so quickly. So we wanted to shoot at a national park. And it was like, well, you have to put your application in, and then there's a six-week turnaround. It's like, but we shoot next week. So in LA, you'd be like, we're shooting here next week, and they'd be like, yep, sure, and tick it off, and then that's fine. So just I think we're not like as filmmaking literate here. Like those government departments don't understand like what actually goes into making these types of films, because they're used to making like films with big budgets and big pre-production windows. There's a lot of sort of like little things like that that equated to like quite large sort of things throughout pre and production.
And it's always something that I talk about with indie filmmakers, indie Australian filmmakers as well, is that we are the land that like low budget genre filmmaking is what made the Australian film industry.
Yeah, 100%.
From your Mad Maxes to your Wolf Creeks and all that stuff. It's like those guys who like just had to do it on their own, and then later they become a big hit, and then we like the government stuff likes to claim them about how great it is, right? But the foundations aren't there to make films like this at a more routine click. And I think more than anything else, a documentary like yours kind of exposes the limitations that we have here. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to over-regulation a lot of times. It just takes, like you said, it takes so long to get things moving and approvals to be made and everything else as well. And I just think that wouldn't it be cool if we can have like an Asylum style studio in Australia? Like if Asylum could do like a Asylum Oz or something, Asylum Australia or something, and just have like a number of productions focus on Australian kind of like where you can tap into Australian things like the Mad Max ripoff or the Wolf Creek ripoff, like stuff like that. That will be a really big boost, because then maybe only then maybe the government bodies and bureaucracies and stuff can see how making things fast, efficient, and logistical would be such a benefit, because then more people be working, more people be learning, and then you can start having the foundations of what we like to think is the Australian film industry, but really isn't, because I don't even know what the Australian film industry is anymore, because I think people have a feeling of what it is, but it's completely different to what I think it is. And to me, what I get from I've been doing this for 20 years now and talking to so many filmmakers, a lot of it comes down to a clash between the filmmakers and the overreach of a government trying to always just stepping in a way every time they're trying to do something. And then a lot of these guys end up going overseas and they don't work here again. And it's an unfortunate kind of like consequence, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think like on your point about the asylum kind of starting a sort of office here. So like what was really kind of cool about that in from my perspective was that a lot of the cast and crew that worked on the asylum, it was their first feature on Land Time Forgot. Sorry, it was their first feature, and
Mm.
they were kind of like they'd had a few roles on short films and stuff, but all of a sudden they've got this really sort of a credit, like a really tangible sort of like currency in the industry here. So then after the Land Time Forgot, they could move on to bigger productions, making better money for themselves and getting credits on more established films. So that was kind of really cool, and that cycle of like just churning people through making a feature film. At the end of the day, no one's going to watch The Land That Time Forgot, but everyone's going to see on your credit that you were BCam operator on a feature film that was released all over the world, and that's all that
Yeah.
matters because that's what the current that that's what you need to get the job that you want. So that was kind of a nice added benefit, I thought.
And it's something for you as well. I mean, you
Yeah,
get two
totally.
films out of this one package. You get the feature film, you get Mockbuster as well. Um, Now that you have that on your filmography, on your resume, that you've got that feature film, Land of Time Forgot, and now you're doing Mockbuster and you're doing the festival runs for that. It's going to come out here soon with Umbrella, and I think later in the States, later this year, it's going to come out as
Yep.
well. What's next for you after that? Are you still talking with Asylum and maybe doing stuff with them? Are you looking to do something in Australia, but in like a more independent capacity, so your own kind of creativity can shine through? What's next for you, you think?
Yeah, nothing concrete yet because we're still kind of waiting for it to come out before we really, dive into pitching. But I would like to do another documentary. So I got a couple of feature ideas and a couple of series ideas that I've been working on just while Mockbuster's doing its festival run. The Asylum have reached out a few times asking if I'd like to do another film here, which it's just tough to fit it in with everything else. So I think I wouldn't say no, but yeah, I think documentary is probably my focus for the time being.
You know what'll be a great idea, and I'm going to take credit for it if that happens. If you can do a series of finding the next Australian asylum documentary filmmaker and have some people pitch their idea and see what their experience is like. Maybe every season can be dedicated to one asylum film and see how it all kind of goes. That would be awesome to see
Yeah,
because maybe you could shepherd the next person to come
yeah,
through the asylum experience. Like maybe you could say, I can't do it now, but there's a couple of filmmakers here that will love the opportunity to try it out. I think that would be really cool. And then you film that
yeah,
and you put it out. I love to see something like that, I think.
yeah. I can be the new Brendan.
Yeah, why not? So for everyone out there listening, before anything else happens, you need to see Mockbuster. So playing at the Sydney Film Festival. So like I said before, 6th June at Event Cinemas, 7th June at Dendy Newtown, and that's a double feature because you have to land that time forgot following from that, so you get double the Frith for one price. I really recommend people do watch Mockbuster because it's a great documentary. It's a really kind of inspiring documentary because I think something that you tap on in this movie more than anything else. I think that when it comes to a lot of people who are creatives, whether it be filmmakers, writers, whatever, they always come to a crossroads where their ambition meets their responsibilities in the real life. And it's like you kind of make decisions like, am I going to go down that path and give it one more shot, or am I just going to step back and accept the role that I have, maybe as a father or a husband or an employee or what have you. It happens to all of us, right? And it's something that you definitely went through. I've gone through that stuff before as well. So
Yeah,
I think it's something a lot of people are really going to take on as well and watching this film. So congratulations to you, Anthony. Congratulations on both The Land at Time Forgot and
thanks.
Mockbuster. And in the future, man, when this is all said and done and Mockbuster's out there and you got a new thing happening, let me know. I'd love to chat again and see
Yeah,
where
that
you're up
sounds
to.
great. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.